if you look at the acronym, boldly leveraging, boldly leveraging affluent connections for knowledge. So we really want to connect the world, not just the Black community, but connect the world to who we are in the Black community, how we can connect with one another and utilize each other's knowledge to leverage towards getting to where it is that we want to get to in life. You see affluent in our acronym, and a lot of times people may go straight towards money, but you can be affluent in so many different things in life. And we really wanted to bring our guests to you to show and to share that affluence with you, so you can take on some of it yourself and go out and be who it is that you are meant to be.
Absolutely. And so I am your guest, your host, I'm sorry, Dr. Sherelle Hobson. I'm your student athlete resilience coach and your athletic program enthusiast. I've been an educator for over 15 years. I've had a pleasure of developing a professional development for athletic coaches within high school and middle school to help the matriculation increase by 90%. I'm also a founder of C12 that focuses on empowering underserved youth through excellence in academics, athletics, and mentorship. That way, we create a lifelong success for them. I'm also an international speaker and author, and I've had the honor of developing two books, Seams of Gold, Discovering Beauty and Brokenness, as well as Unleashing Your Full Potential. These books really help you to find your current place where you're at and getting your life back on track, because we know that life has its challenges, and so this book really gives you the tools on how to take those steps into becoming resilient. And with my doctorate's degree in sports administration and leadership, I focus on African American males and the effects of athletics on their educational plans. So many of you know that I'm very passionate about being productive and making a change in the youth and the Black community.
Well, my name is Brian. Founder and CEO of Your Legacy Begins Now. I started this company back in 2018, but I started working towards developing it when I was living in Miami. And I started to see some things that were wrong with the system, specifically the child welfare system, where teens were aging out, going into adulthood, ending up in jail, ending up dead, ending up with kids of their own in the system. And there seemed to be a perpetuation of that cycle. And I went to administration, and the excuse I was given was that there's no funding there. So I had one foot in the entrepreneurial space, one foot in the social services space. So I asked myself, how can I bring these two worlds together to start generating a revenue stream to go towards developing and sustaining these mentoring and leadership programs, so we don't have to be completely dependent on the government's funds. Currently, I'm really focused on the pushing out of practicing group economics. So I'm working on something that I'm calling the Black Economic Initiative, to where we learn how to promote one another, we learn how to really be there for one another, to support one another, and to purchase from one another when it comes to the Black community, so we can allow that dollar to circulate in our community a whole lot longer. And I'm just so honored and so excited that we have this guest with us today who has done some great things in life from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other end. Now, when you think about professional athletes, typically you hear the horror stories. They didn't know how to manage their money. They were, filthy rich at one point in time, and then they stopped playing their sport or whatever. And the next thing you hear them, out here filing for bankruptcy. Well, the guest that we have today has not only had a successful career in athletics, but she's been able to transfer that into the professional realm, to where she's been able to help individuals make sure they keep their money right. So Dr. Sherelle Hobson, who we got with us today?
We have a special guest. Miss Lauryn Williams is in the building. Yes, we have the one and only. Welcome to the Black Podcast. We're so excited to have you and grateful to have you here as well.
I am so excited to be on this conversation, and that you guys have the podcast in general. There's just a lot of resources that don't exist out there, and I'm grateful to you all for creating a resource for the community to be able to have something positive and encouraging to continue to uplift people.
But thank you for that. Well, we're going to just dive right on in. And so we want to know just a little bit about you. We know that you're, of course, a track superstar, and that's a big part of your journey. I'm a track star as well. So I didn't get to the, Olympics, but I sure tried. But if you can just give us a little bit of a background of who you are, and then we'll kind of have a flow from there. So just let the audience know who you are, a little bit about you. They did see the bio, but we know the track part, and so we want to know a little bit more of that. But we really want to dive into who you are and just a little bit of your background.
Yeah, so I'm Lauryn Williams. I would say I am from Detroit, Miami, and Texas, or Detroit, Miami, and Dallas, if I'm going city-wise. I'm born in Pennsylvania, raised right outside of Pittsburgh, and kind of split time between Pittsburgh and Detroit because my parents split up when I was 3. So I had a good little East Coast upbringing between those two places. And then I went on to the University of Miami, where I got my college education. I got a finance degree from the U. So anybody Hurricane fans out there. And then I stayed there for about 7 or 8 years after. So total about 12 years in Miami. And then I went on to Dallas, Texas, where, like I said, I was kind of transitioning from sport to life after sport. And I decided to start my own company as a certified financial planner who helps young professionals better organize their finances.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you talk about, you started out at track, you started out, being this track athlete, and a lot of our community, which I've done a lot of studies on, sports is more than just entertainment. To the outside world is entertainment, but for us, it's something that it's a motivation. Sometimes some athletes are driven by finances. Like a lot of our young Black males are into sports because they're trying to get out of their situation, or that's their vehicle to college, and some of us just really enjoyed it and discovered our talent and decided we was going to go to school for free and everything else. So when you decided to join track and you decided to be an athlete, I don't know if you did other sports. Let's go back to high school. Let's go back to where did it all start? Did we talk about, did somebody just tell you in PE, like, girl, you fast? Or did you discover it later? Just kind of give us that background of when you first discovered your gift and how it kind of, got you where you're at now.
Yeah, so I will say that sports ended up being my way out, but it was not my plan A as it pertains to the way out. And if there's one thing I can encourage someone listening today, it would be, not to just have a plan A, but to have a plan B, and a, plan C as well, because we don't know where life is going to take us, what doors are going to open, but we need to be working hard towards something. So actually, academics was the thing that was most important to me, what my parents drove home. Where, like you said, frequently we hear, sports is our only way out of a community or only way to something better. My parents drilled in me that education could take me anywhere I wanted to go. And so I had very good grades, and I was kind of counting on academic scholarships. And I think that I would have gotten some academic monies, but at the point at which sports kind of came to the forefront, and I realized that there were more opportunities going to be available to me because of my, athleticism. I was like, oh, okay, well, hard left turn. Like, I'm going to go do the sports thing because, there's a set of schools. And like I said, I believe I could have gotten a full scholarship to some schools for my academics, but there was a much broader range of schools that I could attend because of my athletic ability. But where did it all start? We kind of take a step back. My mom tells this story of me being faster than the family German Shepherd. So one day I got home faster than the dog, and she was like, wait a minute, hold on. Got to get my child into something more structured because this is unbelievable. My dad, on the other hand, says that we were at the Carnegie Science Center, and there was a hologram of Flojo. So Flojo is the world record holder in the 100 meters. And he said that I spent the whole day there racing the hologram. I beat it a few times. I was the youngest person to beat it that day. I don't think it was set at world record pace, to be fair. But, that's when he realized I had some promise. I got a lot of people looking at me, talking about it. And, he said I needed to get in something a little bit more organized at that point. So, where it all began for me was back, just running around the neighborhood, being a kid. And then it kind of grew from there. But education was the main thing, I think, that started my path toward me even wanting to participate in track and field. It's like, okay, well, I can get the education and track is going to be a thing that's going to help me get the education. Then by all means, let's continue on with this.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of, especially women, I think that sometimes we don't share that similar story as a lot of our brothers do. A lot of them go in for financial reasons. And for us, I think that sometimes we naturally, as young Black women and just Black women in general, we have that natural resiliency about us that we're like, oh, I can go to school for free, because back then your parents really, it's almost like the way that people raise their kids then and now, it's almost like I was having this conversation earlier this week. Then parents made a way. So it wasn't like, if you don't run, you're not going to school. It wasn't, that pressure wasn't really on you to, you knew you wanted to make it and you knew you wanted to go for free if you could, but it wasn't one of those things that it was like, if you make it, great, you get to go to college. If you don't make it, you don't get to go to college. And so right now we deal with a lot of athletes who are in that type of situation where parents may not be making a way and they're letting them know, if you don't make it, then I don't know what else you're going to do. And there was a time where you could dump, people off or young kids and off into the Army and join it. Now you have to have degrees to get into a lot of jobs. We used to make jokes like, if you don't graduate, you're going to work at McDonald's. Well, even McDonald's now are looking for people who are more educated. So it's no longer that escape of, okay, if you can make it as an athlete, if you don't, you won't. So when we fast forward to when you got to college, what was your major? Did you know finance was going to be a big part of your life? Was it just a journey for you? Did it start with you graduating in that department, or was it any kind of stories or journey that maybe you saw other people go through that you thought this is a huge problem and needs to be fixed? How did you get into where you're at now?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question, Sherelle, because what a lot of people go through is this pressure. And you kind of just described it of, back in the day, it was like, we're going to figure it out any way we can. Now people are starting to reel back because they're seeing their student loan debt. So the figure it out any way you can ended up being, for our age group, a lot of student loan debt. You went and you did an undergraduate degree and maybe parents didn't have the money to save up, so you borrowed for that. And then you got out of school and you realized, oh, I can't make as much as I thought I was going to make because the college degree is not worth as much as they told me. So I'm going to go get some more because I'm dedicated to my advancement. And now here we are, kind of late 30s, maybe even our 40s, and we have children, and we're looking back and we're saying, no, it's not by any means necessary, because I know what it's like to be strapped with six-figure student loan debt. I know what it's like, for these things that people told me were going to pan out, not to pan out. And so it creates a lot of stress for both the parent and those that are getting ready to go to high school and ship off. But the one thing I'd like to say is, like, don't worry so much about having a clear set plan. Just try to plan as much as possible. So there is value in having a plan. I'm a financial planner. I tell people to make plans all the time. But, mapping things out and things not going as planned is what we have to be prepared for. And I think that was the thing that kind of like led me in all the different directions that I got to go. So you asked me, what did I think major wise? Well, I'd love to give you I did this research and I found out that finance was going to pay me this much. And, and I do encourage people, like I said, do as much as possible, learn from other people's mistakes so that you are better equipped to go into those situations. But I picked finance because I like math and I like money. And as 17 years old, that was in Miami. Example, in Pittsburgh, it was cold in October. I came on my college visit to Miami in October. I'm in Miami right now in October, and I'm like, gosh, it's 80. It's wonderful. But those little things at 17 years old were all the ability that I had the ability to say, like, okay, it's warm here. If I'm going to have to be running track, then I'd rather be where it's warm than cold, because I have an obligation to do so to get this education. And like I said, I'm very entrepreneurial. So I sold candy in high school. I had all kinds of little businesses. The day I turned 16, I went and I got a job at Wendy's. I actually got home and told my dad, like, guess what I did for my birthday? I got a job. And he was like, what? He's like, I didn't give you permission to get a job. And I was like, permission? Like, you have to be 16 to work. And he's like, but you're not an adult yet, so you need to ask me. So there was that whole back and forth. But I was just very money oriented. And so when people said, what do you like? I was like, I love money and I do math well. And they're like, oh, math and money is finance. So I was like, okay, And I didn't know what finance was really at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't know what kind of jobs you got in that, what I wanted to do or be. And I think sometimes we put too much pressure on people to kind of have it all figured out. And that makes them kind of reel back in and not want to do anything. You kind of get what we call analysis paralysis. So just to encourage people, like I said, to move forward, but also to, to plan and realize that things don't always go as planned. That doesn't mean you don't make a plan.
Right.
It's that you're, as prepared as possible so that you can pivot when it's appropriate.
Right. That's funny. We have a similar story. I remember I got my first job when I was 15 and I started bagging groceries. I would leave straight from track practice, get on the bus and go and start, bagging up at the grocery store. And my dad was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm trying to make money," like I was tired of asking and getting the answer no from my mom. So my mom was like, "No." So I was like, I'm gonna start making my own money. So I definitely feel like, the nuggets that our parents had installed in us, early. My dad used to talk about credit when I was in high school. He used to be, your credit got to be on point. And I was like, I'm gonna pay cash, for everything. So he was like, "No, you're not." So he used to always talk to me about credit and credit and credit. And I would be like, oh my gosh, like nobody needs that. And I didn't realize until I got older that a lot of people weren't taught about credit and they weren't taught about money. Now I love money, not good at math, but I know what broke looks like. And I know that's not where I want to go. So I'll be like, if somebody else is good with money, they can help me handle it, but I know what not to spend. So having that nugget is an additional gift to have, because a lot of people don't have that. Some people don't know how to save money or come up with a financial plan or anything. So that's definitely a gift, and they have people out there like you that are going to help them, reach their goals.
Man, and like you've been grinding since you were young. Man, most people ain't like, "Mama, Daddy, can I have some money?" instead of going to get their own. So, just me knowing a little bit about Miami. What part of Miami you were in high school in Miami?
No, I was only in college in Miami.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. All right. So, well, that makes sense. That kind of takes away from my question. I was about to ask, what was some of that peer influence whenever you were in that stage in life? Because not everybody is as laser focused and money hungry and like, look, I'm about to make this happen. 16 years old, most people, can I get my driver's license? Can I get a car? Instead of, can I get a job? So during that stage in high school, obviously you had the athletics, you knew that your athletic skills were going to take you somewhere, had the potential of taking you somewhere. How did you keep the distractions at bay when you were, in like, that, okay, there's a potential of me running, being a racer at, a global scale? How did you stay focused and keep the distractions at bay during that time?
I was fortunate. I don't know where you get it from, if it's genetic, if you're born with it. They talk about the various qualities that people come with, but I've been a leader for most of my life. And, as an adult, it sounds like kind of cocky or something, but you look back on it and I didn't realize it at the time. I was class president all 4 years of high school. And so like little things like that were building a foundation. So you talk about like distractions. I wasn't going to allow myself to be distracted because I had my plate too full. Like I'm leading the class, that they're looking to me as the example. So I need to set a proper example. I'm juggling whatever it is, what it takes to be a student body president. And then also compete in my sport, have a job. I didn't have time for BS, if you will, because I was keeping my plate full of things that were going to be productive to get me where I wanted to go. And so there has to be some sort of, I have a vision and a mission. And while I'm not, like I said, at 17, I wasn't a guru at figuring these things out, but I knew that having a job was productive. Like I said, get my own money so I didn't have to ask parents for it. I knew that my grades were important because I wanted to go on to a second level of education. And so I didn't have time to play in the classroom, skip the class, not do the homework, because I realized that the information was valuable and that the smarter I was, the more lethal as a weapon I was going to be. So it wasn't for me ever a thing where it's like, oh, class is so boring, school is stupid, I just want to go to sleep. I didn't have that attitude from the very beginning because there just wasn't time. I was like, I want to be successful. And I will give my parents credit too for just exposing me to different things. So inner city Detroit, where I lived with my mother, I went to private school. The only white people that I saw were my nuns. And so, there was one set of values and systems and things that I learned there. And then, because it was a predominantly Black city, I had a lot of Black influences. My mom made sure to surround herself with lawyers and doctors and, people that were in professional world. So I didn't grow up with just that kind of athlete vibe or, like you said, hip hop star. That is a lot of what we see on television, and we don't have a lot of examples in communities. But my mom was very intentional about making sure that I met people like that, so that I knew that that was a thing, and that the way that they got there was their education. So that was one part of it. And then the other part too, like I said, when I moved to Pennsylvania to be with my dad, I was the only Black girl in my graduating class. So it was complete flip-flop culture shock, but I also went to public school there. So in Detroit, I had no choice but to go to private school to kind of keep me in a situation where she felt like I was going to be getting the proper education. And then I went to where, a smaller town, public school, and I had to kind of figure out like, well, how do I navigate this situation? No one looks like me, to the most popular people in the class. And like I said, I was class president all 4 years. So I learned something very different about race than what other people may have experienced. Because they didn't shun me. They didn't treat me poorly. In fact, like I said, I ended up rising to the top in the midst of, something that could have set me back. And then there was also that small town vibe. So Detroit was a very big city. Where I moved in Pennsylvania was 88 in my graduating class. I think there were 365 in my whole high school. So very, very small town life. And for me, it was just like, well, I don't want to stay here, have a baby, work at the local grocery store, and, that be it for me, because I've already experienced what it's like to be in a big city. I've seen other things. I know that there's more to life. So I'm not going to, fall prey to doing what everyone else is doing. I have a clear set of goals that I know, and I want to go out and explore the world.
Wow.
Man, where they make them at, like you? I see what you say. You mentioned a lot about your influence, what your parents exposed you to. And that's one thing that, especially being here in the South, there's not a lot to expose your kids to show them what potentials are. So whenever my parents told me my dad told me to major in accounting because I was a good kid, like super smart through school. I graduated high school, 3.89 GPA, and go into accounting because that was the highest level of prestige of financial excellence that he had ever seen. So he's like, go into that area. And I went into college and I wasn't focused. I was a student athlete all through high school. When I went to college, I tried to walk on to the football team, but I didn't make the cut. And I didn't know how to be just a student. So I'm out here getting on all these intramural teams, spending the whole day in the rec center, and those grades just plummeted. And it was simply because I didn't really have that foundation. So I'm saying this to say, those parents out there with student athletes, make sure that you expose them to more than just that sport. Make sure you expose them, especially in the Black community, to more than just sports, to more than just the entertainment scene, because when you see more, you know that more exists, you know that there's more potential for you, and it helps put you in a group, a category outside of the status quo. And you're making it like very evident that you were never the average bear.
Right. And I think it's important too to say, Brian, that, we weren't rich. Some people might be kind of putting the story together because he said, obviously we can't get my whole life story in this hour, but the private schooling, my mom was working extra jobs. My grandma was chipping in. They were just, however we could get to get that education. We were not fancy by any means. There were times that I was at home because school wasn't paid for. So I wasn't sick. It wasn't nothing I could do. I had to sit home for a couple of days because they weren't letting me come back until that check was there. So it wasn't all sunshine and roses. And I also have 5 sisters and 2 brothers. My dad had leukemia. He spent a large part of my kind of childhood on disability. So, we were dependent on government, help to get what we needed. Yeah, there was not, like I said, despite them telling me all these things and showing me I can do them, and like I said, creating the environment, and even just moving to an area where, like I said, I could get a public school education, but it was actually better than the private school education I was getting in Detroit. Like little strategic things like that, we can do without having unlimited resources as it pertains to cash. I think we see money and we think of that as the only kind of resource that's gonna help us get where we want to go. And yes, it can be very helpful. But there are all kinds of resources out there, and we got to challenge ourselves to think outside the box to give our children opportunities.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you made a lot of great points, and I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. Um, a lot of times people make those excuses. So when I look at my life and I look at how I got a scholarship and I went on this big journey of track and field and coaching and running and all these things, you know, I had a lot of things that I was dealing with as I got older, just having that competitive edge, right? It was always about winning. I mean, that was a great thing about track is like when you stepped out there, either you worked or you didn't work. And it's on you. I used to tell my athletes all the time, like, okay, you can play around at practice, but when the gun go off, they're gonna be looking in your leg. It's on you. I'm gonna be in the stands because I'm done coaching this week. And so they used to be like, dang, and they come with the tears in their eyes. It's like, I don't know why you're crying. But anyway, so we talk about how competitive, you know, we go into, I get on my little coaching ramp, you know, but I had to learn, you know, I was just like you and it was just very focused. I wasn't the kid in high school. I wasn't interested in being popular. I wasn't interested in trying to fit in. I was like, man, I'm trying to get a track scholarship, got the track scholarship, got the school. Then I was like, man, I'm trying to get this degree and graduate. Then it was like, okay, I'm trying to make it to the Olympics. And then it was like, okay, now I'm trying to get a job. You know, so I've been my whole life for probably 37 years like this. And a lot of it, again, is because my parents, you know, the structure, but they didn't give me pressure. It was just mostly kind of giving me the freedom to have my own mind. But it was just that support of me knowing that this was right and this is wrong. And so I had enough people in my life that I can see, like, that's not the way I wanted to go. So a lot of times we talk about putting the resources, and maybe people are thinking they don't, because they don't have the resources, they can't make it. And that's not always true. You know, it's something that you have to feel internally, that you feel like, I'm going to make it. I don't know, I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to make it. And some of us had great lives that, you know, we had mom and dad to support us, and some people didn't. But it doesn't mean that makes your story or your journey. It's just a part of who you are. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when people think about, oh, private school, okay, I'm gonna, you know, go ahead and log off of this because she got money. And that's what we talked about earlier about, that's when parents made a way, you know, and because you were very independent and, you know, you had your goals set, that you were able to stay on track. And that's super important. So now I want to talk about, I know some of the struggles I had as an adult being very competitive is training for a track meet is the same and also different than training for your life. There's some races that you're not going to win. And so and I'm like, I be preaching to myself. So I had to learn that, because I remember when my brother passed away, I went to go see a counselor about grieving. And she said, how do you know when you've had enough? Like, how do you know when you're completely satisfied and you're happy? And I was like, well, I know I'll be happy once I, you know, get this certain job I'm looking for, athletic director, when I get married and I have kids. And she was like, and will that be it? Will you feel like, you know, you are happy and content? And I was like, well, how much is it? You know, like it's just like it's never a cap, because I feel like as an athlete, you always feel like there's room for improvement. I can just work, and these are the results I get. How are you able to, I guess, go from being very competitive in the sport where you constantly training, you're constantly, you know, everybody's out to get you because when they see you, it's like, hey, I got to beat her, to now transitioning to life and knowing there's going to be some races I'm going to lose, but is it really losing? You know, talk a little bit about that transition of how you change your mindset, or if it changed from being an athlete, an Olympic athlete, to now being, you know, are you a mother, or okay, so just your life, just how you transferred to that where you're at now.
Yeah, so this is an amazing one, and like I said, all the analogies that we can go through here to, you know, kind of drive the point home. But I named my company Worth Winning because for me, I had to get to that point that you're talking about where I had to realize that there was more to life than just getting on top of the podium. And you have those really, like, there's these moments where you're like, okay, if I could just get here, and then you get here and you're like, All right, but now if I just do da 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 plus this and then and then if you're a driven person, you are a couple years later now, and it's like now what? And I had to really realize that what we go through mostly as athletes is that kind of letdown because so many people tell us that the championship and the pinnacle, the Super Bowl, the Olympic gold medal, whatever that thing is the pinnacle of all pinnacles. And you miss things all along the way because you're gonna have wins, you're gonna have fun times, you're gonna make new friends, you're gonna build your network. Like you said, you're building all sorts of life skills and characteristics. And if only thing that you're focused on is whatever that that monumental I'm gonna get here thing, even if you get there, you're gonna get there and be disappointed because guess what? They played the national anthem and I walked off and guess what? It was 1 minute later in my life. That was it. It was over. And what else? Because it's not time to die yet. So what do you do next?
Right.
And it's this huge moment where you're just like, womp, womp, womp. Like, what is the point and how am I going to find anything above and beyond that? And then you have to either realize, like I said, you can spend your life chasing that or you realize, oh, there's a lot more to life that is worth winning than that one moment, that 1 minute, that one accomplishment. There's so much more as we go on this journey and appreciating the journey and appreciating the moments and the small wins that you're having on a daily basis are far more valuable than thinking about, like I said, just getting to this one particular place and all the things that you learn along the way. So like you said, in business, sports has taught me like not just said how to be a good winner, but how to be a good loser because you don't win everything.
You don't win.
Not even the most decorated athlete, the person with the most Super Bowl rings, whatever you want to say, nobody has won it all. They've all had a terrible, sucky day at some point. And how you handle losing is going to direct how you end up being a winner in the long term. So little things like that sports teaches you. And that's the thing too. If you're an athlete, we always talk about like not knowing what to put on our resume because we dedicated so much time to sport. Sports is giving you all kinds of life skills that are applicable to whatever it is you want to do in your adulting type life. And make sure that you kind of harp on those, realize that you have those, how to work together with others, if you're track and field, how to, be independent and work on your own, how to delegate to other people, and the list just goes on and on and on. But there have been tons of things in my life, and in sport that have helped me be able to be successful as I've ventured off into entrepreneurship and as I go about my day-to-day life adulting.
Yeah. It definitely does transfer over, as long as you're doing it right. I know just kind of what you said earlier, I missed probably majority of my 20s, all of it. And I'm talking about relationships, with my teammates, I missed all of it because I was so focused on just making it, and so I remember going back to my reunion maybe 2 years ago. And I wasn't going to go because it was kind of like I was busy and I had all this stuff going on. But then I told myself, everybody's going to expect you not to be there because you've always been the busy girl, So I went almost because my ego was like, you better go because they think you ain't coming, So when I went, it was really, it really changed me. But when I walked in, my teammates were crying because they, one, didn't think I was coming. And then because they had already still built a relationship throughout college. They had continued, went to each other's weddings and been in each other's weddings. And, I kind of graduated and was like, all right, thank y'all, take my trophies, see you later, and been gone. So they were crying because, they weren't expecting to be there. But I remember looking at all the slideshows and the presentations, and I'm in every picture, but I remember nothing. I don't remember walking to Whataburger with my teammates. I don't remember the time the dog chased us and we had to jump a gate. I do remember sneaking off after our championship and going on Bourbon Street. I remember that a little bit, but just a little bit. But everything else I don't remember. And so I have to rebuild those relationships again because I was so focused. So I'm so glad that you talked about how, you can be super tunnel, laser focused, but you also want to be very present of what you do have going on in relationships that you're building, because those do help to transfer over to what you're doing now, being an entrepreneur. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And just thinking about the entrepreneurial space, looking at where you came from, and I'm so glad that you mentioned some of the tough times. And you like, well, no silver spoon in this mouth. I'm glad that you mentioned all that because just as you name your company Worth Winning, I name my company Your Legacy Begins Now, because so many people get caught up on the past, be it good or bad. Either you're living in the glory days and like you made it back then and now you're just complacent, or you struggled all your life and your last name means struggle to you. So many people get hung up in that. No, when you surround yourself with the right people and start putting the right things into your mind, you can start living your life of purpose today. It don't matter when today is, it can start today because your legacy begins now. Whenever you decide to turn on that switch, this is what I'm going to be focused on, this is what I'm going to go after. That's when you start what you want to be your legacy. So looking at your transition, coming from athletics, finishing, getting your degree, and getting your degree to starting your own company, and then getting it rolling. What has that experience been like? Because a lot of people say, I'm gonna get my degree and then I'm good. I'm gonna get this job, start working my way up. I do a series and I'm looking to start a workshop. Your degree alone is not enough. So what was that transition like for you?
It was a tough one. Like you said, I was afforded a lot of opportunities by being able to participate in sport, but I also missed out on a lot of opportunities as well. My peers finished school at 21 and went and got internships and they got jobs at entry level and they started to work their way up. I was 30 when I finished sport. And so I missed, I'm 9 years behind with no work experience. And I did better than I think the average athlete. I got an MBA while I was participating in sport. I got a real estate license. I did a couple internships. So it wasn't that it wasn't on my mind at all. I did what I could, but, sport was my main responsibility. And so I felt like I wasn't ill-equipped, but I felt like I was ill-equipped to transition from sport to life after sport. I was very unconfident. I needed help just like kind of understanding like I belong in this space and I can do something else. And like I said, I had been building all these little things and making sure that I had something to put on my resume, but I still didn't have very much confidence that I was going to be okay in the next kind of environment that I was putting myself in. And so I, first had to go decide what I wanted to do. And, in deciding what you want to do, you have to first decide who you are. And that is a huge thing that athletes struggle with. And it does not matter. Like you said, I don't know if they've seen a documentary, but Michael Phelps talks about it. We've heard all the big name athletes, kind of struggle with identity as well. So it's not about how much you accomplish, how much money you make, any of those things. You have to really understand your purpose beyond, this one thing that people see you as. And that was a hard thing for me to really get an understanding for because so many people. So I remember like clearly being at a networking event and this gentleman saying to me, oh, so, are you getting ready for the next season? I said, no, I've retired. And he said, oh, so what are you going to do now? You're going to coach? And I was like, no. And he's like, oh, so you're going to be a personal trainer? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, can you coach my kids? And, it was just like this narrow box that people put you in that because you played a sport, the only thing that you're interested in is doing something sports related and not just sports related, but the only thing you can do is coach. And so I let that man deflect on me. He was probably innocent enough in his pursuit, just trying to keep a conversation going. But it really, really hurt my feelings. I was like, no one's ever going to think of me as anything other than an athlete, despite all these degrees, despite this, despite that. And so you have to go and go internally and say, I am more than what that gentleman or anybody thinks of me, and then decide who I am, and then to start to tell your story. And that was the biggest part of me beginning the transition from sport to life after sport and to feeling confident as I went and built my business.
Yeah.
Of course, you're building something you never built before. So that's also a hard thing. You wake up every day, there's a new challenge, there's something new to learn, and it's exciting, but it's also scary. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to need to build a new team around you. You're going to have someone that you can ask for help. And so, my confidence, slowly started to build. But it was at snail's pace that it was building because I was in a new uncharted area, but I knew that what I was doing had purpose behind it. And I knew very clearly, athletes have not had access to financial advice. I was an athlete who didn't get access to good financial advice. So I know that this is a gap. And then as I talked to more of my friends, I realized, oh, young professionals don't have this in general. It's not just athletes. And so I started to build something that I knew was needed because people in their 20s and 30s, early 40s are not working with a financial planner. They've been turned off because someone tried to like sell them insurance or something like that. And, they run the other direction and now they're not getting any help whatsoever. And so I decided like, let me just focus on what I wanted. Let me know that that's my purpose, is to fill a gap for this group, and let that be the thing that drives me each and every day so that I can move forward. If I can focus on that, then I'm going to be all right.
Yeah. And like you said, the key to it is really knowing who you are. And a lot of us discover that, later on in life, of who we are. And that's through that journey. I was in that same boat where, here I am, been climbing in my education. And so I graduated with my doctorates, and for so long I've been an educator, and I was also coaching track, but I've always had another space that people don't know about. I was a speaker, I was an author, I was doing all this other stuff. And I remember an admin coming to me and saying, "Oh wow, I heard that you had graduated." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Did you like go to a university or?" And I said, "Yeah, I went to a university." Why would you ask me that? And so first I said, no, I went to Walmart. And then I thought, and she was like, oh, and I was like, yeah, I went to school. But like you said, people can put you into a box and say, well, it's okay if I just continue to call you coach because I'm so used to calling you coach instead of calling you doctor. It's like, no, like, so people do tend to put you in a box of where they feel like you belong. And if you don't have the willpower or that strength or that inner person saying, I'm more than a baton, I'm more than a basketball, I'm more than a football. I think that one athlete nowadays, if I just think at the top of my head, that knows his value as an athlete, I would say would be LeBron James. He really uses his voice to, he knows that without him, there is no basketball. He knows there is no NBA. There's no money gonna be making if he doesn't play. And so because he understands his value, he really expresses his voice to the youth, and to the community, because he can shut things down easily. Like when they shut the whole NBA thing down for a while, going on strike, people were like, "Whoa, okay, we'll participate. We'll support Black Lives Matter because we want this, basketball to get back up." And so he used his platform to be an influence. And so a lot of times athletes do allow people, to put them in those boxes and say, well, you're only good at these things. Maybe their intentions are well, but they allow it. And if you can get caught up and you don't know who you are, you can easily get caught up into, well, maybe I am supposed to be doing this, and maybe I am supposed to be doing that. So the fact that you were able to say, well, no, I know that it was more, but that you also shared that there were challenges that you had where you started to question yourself. So now where you're at in your business, when do you feel like the titles, because people like titles right now, back in these days, everybody likes titles. So that's the reason why I went to get a degree. I'm like, okay, here, you got the title. Now, can I get the job or can I make some money? So like, it's unfortunate. We live in a world that's very shallow and that people do want titles. Do you feel like you're having to still use like your titles as, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing? Just even though you're speaking the same language, maybe they pay attention to you a little bit more because they're like, let me Google her. Oh, well, damn, she kind of important. Now I might listen to who she is or what she's saying. Do you feel like you still have to have that battle of people taking you serious or having to kind of put out there who you are in order for them just to listen?
Yes, definitely feel like the titles or the credentials still matter. And I think it has to do with, kind of one bad apple ruins the whole bunch. There's a lot of perceptual issues with, how we govern ourselves as African American people, how, young people, there's just all these like biases and boxes, like you said, once again, that people put you in. And so it's like, well, she can't be, she says she's running the business, but, and they just fill their head with ... fill in the blank based on what they've learned or experienced previously. So the titles are, like you said, they get to the website and they see, oh, master's degree in business, oh, real estate license, oh, certified financial planner, Series 65, and on and on and on. That level of legitimacy, like, okay, well, let me circle back and take a second look. And then, we talk about like having to work twice as hard to have half as much sort of thing. I feel that as well as it pertains to, like I said, if you don't have these titles to prove that you can get whatever, you can warrant charging XYZ dollars, people are always going to be looking for, is this valuable? Is this worth what I paid for it because of whatever it is that they've experienced in the past? And so we have to kind of like unbrainwash people that, yes, we are professionals. Yes, we are educated. Yes, we can put a sentence together and be articulate and, handle our things and show up on time, etc. So I feel like there's like this pressure to kind of undo not so much what people did in the past. Like, some of it is what actual people did, but some of it is just straight up perception, not confounded on anything. And that's just the way they see. Or even in television shows. So we talk a lot about the media and how it has an effect. And a lot of people just don't really like to acknowledge that, there are some people out there that have not, they're white people in this world who have seen power and empire, and that's it, because it comes on primetime TV, television, and they've never come across Black people on a regular basis. So if that is all they have to govern us by, we can't hold it against them that they're afraid or they're looking crazy or whatever when we come along, because they don't actually have anybody in their environment, which is where people need to do a better job of diversifying their own immediate circles. But I find like myself feeling a lot of pressure around, like I said, holding myself accountable to being like this level of excellence, so that people realize that level of excellence does exist. So I'm an example for other, Black children, Black ladies, Black young professionals, Black athletes that are trying to transition. But also I am, the one example that somebody might bump into on an elevator if it's full of white people. I want to make sure that they see like, oh, good morning, good afternoon, a smile. Like, you don't need to be afraid of me, sort of thing. And so, yeah, I'm just constantly dealing with it.
Man, there's so much of what you've shared with us that, and it tends to be a trend, that you take lessons, you take skill sets, you take leadership skills from one area of life and you throw it onto every other thing that you do. So you will allow the fact that you were this strong leader coming up to pour into everything else that you do. So making that transition from being an athlete to getting your degrees to going and starting your own company. Yes, each of them is a new territory, but when you bring that same leadership skill, that same internal, I got this, you're gonna get there. And that's something that I see all too often, where it'll get difficult and then people will let me just go back to what's simple, what's comfortable, what I'm expected to do. But, as I watched you and I knew about what's, worth winning before I knew the depth of your athletic career. So I'm like checking you out as a businesswoman first. I'm like, hold up now. She'd have been in the winter and the summer and she got medals. What? Like, she is legit. So it just goes to show, like you said, perception. So many people are going to place their perception on you. And sometimes we feel like we have to prove not to be something else to dismantle that perception. But at the same time, we have to continue to expose the masses, or to the masses, that there is a complete spectrum of who we are in the Black community. And not only show that to the outside community, but the purpose of the Black podcast, show it to our community. Like, look, you can be this. You don't have to be what you see on TV. You don't have to be that guy that you see that seems like he's never at work. He's just up and down the road all day. You ain't got to be that person. So I just want to say, before we get ready to close, just to thank you for being you. And like, I think back to the podcast that we did back in whatever year it was. And it's like that relationship has never stopped. I know we haven't conversed a whole bunch, but I'll be watching you. I'll be watching you out here. And I'm like, that's my girl. I love the fact that she's continuing to level up, and be that example, because we need more of them. And the fact that all three of us ran track back in the day, I don't know if you get this. Do you? And a lot of people, I'm sure they get tired of it. Like, when people still try to challenge you. I bet I'm faster than you now. Do you ever get that?
Everybody always want to race. I say, well, if I win, how much do I win? And that kind of stuff.
Money. Don't give me no medal. Give me cash.
That's it.
Because it's gonna be worth my hamstring when I be walking around. I used to do that when I first started coaching. I would tell the girls like, "We'll get my spikes out the trunk," coming out the blocks and all kind of craziness. And then they see they're calling for a whole week, pull my hamstring. I'm like, and then your pride just just all the way down. I think a couple of years ago I played in like a faculty versus student basketball game. And I had been talking trash for at least a week straight to the kids, telling them that their crossover was going to be weak. And after the first 5 minutes, I tore my ACL. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe I went all these years, college, all this stuff, no injuries, though, I had little hamstrings, but no. And then to go this far and get a torn ACL, I'm like, seriously? So, yeah. I'm sure you probably get a lot of people, even when I'm running on the track, just working out. I got somebody next to me, I'm like, dude, I'm not racing. Just trying to get in regular shape, regular people shape. Just trying to get, but I'm just so glad that you were, again, we know that in being vulnerable really helped our community grow, not only for ourselves, but other people. And just being able to share your story and tell people, this is what you see when you Google me, but this is my life. This is who I am. And everybody has a journey, and some don't have to have a traumatic story attached to it. I didn't have a traumatic story. You didn't have a traumatic, story. But some people feel like they have to have, well, I was homeless. I was sleeping underneath the car. For those who have that story, that's their story. But I think a lot of times, in sports, especially on the men's side, they like to say, look at such and such. He grew up living underneath a bridge and his mama didn't have no food and he just met his dad last year and everybody's like, oh, we saved him, And so the fact that you had that story saying things weren't easy, but things weren't also super bad. It was like your parents made that way. And I feel like it's important for people and athletes to know whatever your journey is and whatever your story, may end up being, doesn't mean there's always still that one finish line that we're all trying to get to. And how you get there may take a little longer than some people. Like you said, you felt like you were 9 years behind, but you're probably right in the right place at the right time. And so I'm just so grateful that you shared your story with us. And I was telling people that you were going to be on. They were like, V. Williams, how you get her on the show? What you got? I was like, yeah, I can't tell y'all all my secrets. You know what I'm saying? I got some good connects, but they don't know. But I'm just so grateful that Brian had you on, and he really spoke very highly of you. And what you're doing is so important to our community. We talk about finances and we talk about self-identity, and just making that transition from being an athlete to now real life. So just thank you for sharing that with us today.
And before we actually close out, if there was one, for the times that we're in right now, one financial tip that you would give to our audience, what would that be?
One financial tip: save something for yourself and save it first. So it is kind of like an age-old thing. The saying is pay yourself first. So you get some money in, the first thing you need to do is set some money aside for yourself. And then all these people that are lined up. So people are usually like, oh, I got to pay my rent. I got to pay this. I got to pay so-and-so. Student loans are due. Da, 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 da. And then you get to the end and you're like, well, I got to treat myself something. And then I'm going to save what's left over. And there's $3 left. If you instead say, I am going to put something aside for myself, it's much better if you can do the math. So you got a plan. Then you know how much you need by when. Then you know how much exactly you need to be saving. Save that amount and live off of what's left over. And you'll be in a much better position than if you're always trying to save at the very bottom. Put yourself as a top priority, and that'll start to change the trajectory for your finances.
Thank you so much for that. And where can everybody find you? What is your website, or do you want them to reach out on social media? What do you have coming up, and where can they find you?
I am just about everywhere. So my name is Lauryn, Lauryn Williams. So you type that in via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you'll find me. And then my company is called Worth Winning. And we are also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The company website is worth-winning.com. If you're looking for like speaking or motivational Olympic type stuff, that's lauren-williams.com. Like I said, I'm very easy to find. I really love helping people organize their finances, do whatever they can to optimize and take themselves to a different place, because we know that we've struggled financially as a community. And one of the things we definitely need to do is change the narrative to get more comfortable having conversations first, which is what I had Brian on to talk about. So go back and listen to his episode if you haven't seen that yet. And yeah, just let's get talking about finances and let's start optimizing it.
Thank you so much for that. All right, we're going to close out.
Well, first and foremost, thank you again, Lauryn. You're doing your thing. You're being an example. And if you have you got any books out or anything along those lines?
I do have a book too. Yes. So my book is called The Oval Office. And it's all about what it is like to be a professional track and field athlete. So it's not my life story. It's more of a guide to doing professional track and field, because unlike the NFL, MLB, and all those things where there's a draft and there's a rookie camp and there's all these kind of things that are set up and kind of purposely put together, in track and field, it's like, oh, you're fast. An agent calls you or an agent doesn't call you, or you're trying to figure it out. And so this is kind of like the guide to all the things I wish I would have known that I had to learn along the way while participating in sport. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, we're going to direct people to your social media, your website, your book, and just continue to support you. Like I said, you're doing your thing, girl. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, we got to continue to support one another. Now more than ever, we need to be lifting each other up, encouraging one another, and then actually doing the support. So whatever action it is that is necessary to support each other, we have to do that as well.
Thank you for that.
All right. So that's the show for today. We'll put you in the background or in the back stage real quick, Lauryn, and then we'll close out shortly with you. And again, thank you so much for your time. So, guys.
Well, another great show.
Another in the book. So this is our last show for October. We've had some great shows all throughout the last couple of months. We're probably going to make sure that we have a certain period of time that we allow all of them to maintain live before we start to transition them into the actual podcast form. But we'll definitely be making periodic announcements on that on our social media. So,
yeah. And so make sure you still tune in for the Black Podcast. We will have a lot of different things coming up. And we'll have some features that we're going to be putting out there, getting some organizations. So if you have an organization that you are dealing with young men, please make sure you reach out to us. And we will make sure that we support your organization, whether it's funding, whether it's social media, whatever we need, marketing, anything that you need to help your organization prosper with dealing with the youth. Please make sure you reach out to us. So again, this is our last show in October. So we're just so glad that we closed out with Worth Winning with Lauryn Williams. She has a great story, but not only winning in athletics, but also winning in life and taking the challenges as they come and continuing to push forward. So we're just so glad to have her. Make sure that you share this video, share this show. You never know who needs it. And again, if you are looking for that financial planner, and even if you're not looking for a financial planner, you need to get you one. Get your money together. Go ahead and reach out. Her website is on here, her social media, and just support one another so that we can all prosper and all be productive in our community. So thank you for tuning in to the Black Podcast here. Always every Thursday at 4 p.m. We'll see you soon.
Have a good one. Peace.